Right. We are going to be playing out, General Katuch, we're going to play out some visuals right now of Prime Minister at the Holocaust Memorial, Yad Vashem. This, as we can see, deeply moving. Prime Minister Netanyahu also there. This is the book of names, the names of all those Holocaust victims. A story, they said everyone, there's a name to every one of them. And of course, there's a life behind each one who has lived in this world, and they have relations, many who trace their, have some connection to this place amongst the Jewish community across the world. So Prime Minister, of course, in a moment of solidarity and remembrance, paying his respects to the memory of the Holocaust victims. Indeed, and we can see that both leaders toured the Book of Names. It documents 4.8 million Jewish victims, and they participated in a memorial ceremony at the Hall of Remembrance. And the Prime Minister laid a wreath, as we saw. He observed a moment of silence. Indeed, this is the second visit that Prime Minister has made to this memorial, the Yad Vashem Memorial. A solemn moment there, which took place a little while earlier. This is the first event of the day for the Prime Minister today, and then he will be meeting with President Isaac Herzog, and then he will have delegation-level talks with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and there will be the signing of agreements as well later in the day. We did notice also that yesterday Prime Minister placed a wreath before entering into the Knesset, and that was in memory of victims of the recent terror attack of October 7th, 2023. Right. Let's bring in our guests once again. General Katuch, you were speaking and I, sort of came in, but perhaps you can share your views on what you're seeing.
No, I think this is a very moving ceremony. And it reminds me of the ceremonies which also take place in India Gate at our own war memorial, where anybody who comes there, and a very large number of civilians I know who have requested me, they wanted to go there and they have visited that place. They carry that sense, that very deep sense of respect for the soldiers who gave their lives. In this particular case, 4.some million people who have laid down their lives, and their names are there. I think it's important to make just one statement. They're just not names. They are lives. There were people who had families, who had love, who had faith, who had everything which makes a human being. And then they were obliterated. We face the same situation here when we look at what happened in the Pahalgam massacre, where 26 people were killed. They weren't just 26 names. They were families.
Right.
And I think it's important that we remember all these things so that they are not repeated again. We have to remember so that these incidences do not take place again. Let there be no genocide the way it took place against the Jews, and let there be no massacres the way they have taken place in Pahalgam.
Indeed. Ambassador Bhattacharya, your views on what we are seeing right now, and also, Prime Minister yesterday spoke about moving forward with wisdom and humanity at the current time.
It is very important to know your history. One should never forget it, but one should not be bound by it, and therefore there has to be that respect for that past, but there has to be that process of moving on into the future. And this blend is something that comes through a certain feeling in civilizations like ours, which are plural in our orientation, and which have also gone through various, as most civilizations do, ups and downs. We understand this, but it is important to remember. And this is what a remembrance is, that you pay homage. You recall what had happened and hope and work so that it doesn't happen again. The future can still be bright, and therefore you must nurture the young people so that they can have a light at the end of the tunnel.
Sorry. General Katoch, Prime Minister yesterday in his address to the Knesset, looked for the way forward in terms of, he did mention, even with the current conflict that is the Gaza question. In terms of what India continues to stand with the two-state solution, and Prime Minister did mention there that, we need to deal with things with humanity and with wisdom as responsible people in the current times. How would you look at this in terms of, when we are remembering the past? These are all symbolic, of course, and also significant, but in taking forward a vision for the future, which is peaceful and at the same time secure.
I think the Prime Minister, this statement was very significant because the Prime Minister specifically said, he talked about the two-state solution.
Right.
And in various interactions with the Israelis, they aren't very happy with the two-state solution, you see.
Right.
They want it all. Now, I don't think that is going to work, which is why I think it was important for the Prime Minister to actually make a mention that we have got to move on. There is something beyond conflict, because if you don't have a two-state solution, perhaps we are going to be perpetually in conflict. So can we move ahead? That is what the United Nations has actually proposed, but this proposal was vetoed by, was not supported either by Israel or by the United States when we talk about the two-state solution. But it was important, I think, for the Prime Minister to mention it, specifically to say that, as the Ambassador also mentioned, we remember the past,
right,
but we need to look ahead and see what the future is going to be. Can that future be different? Can we have a different solution? Can we have peace?
Right.
And in that peace process, what is the best way forward? Here again, Mark, what I mentioned earlier, I think India has got the goodwill of both the parties to be in a situation by which we will be trusted to lend our voice to what both parties perceive to be right.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, so in terms of this memorial, of course, it is a stark reminder of the brutality of the Holocaust, but it also probably, at some level will generate, the desire for revenge. And perhaps that is what, both you and General Katoch and even the Prime Minister is referring to as probably unnecessary at a current time like this to move on. And in that context, how do you think, does the Israeli state, in a sense, move on in terms of peace? Are they actually a nation that looks for peace?
I think the Israeli state is one that looks for peace. But what we have seen in recent times is that they have adopted the route of war to achieve that peace. And that particular war went on for a fairly long period of time. Revenge is the weakness of human spirit. And it is that weakness that brings about further destruction in your own self. I don't think this remembrance ceremony at the Holocaust Museum, for instance, is for revenge. It is for remembrance, but also for regeneration rather than revenge. I think if I may go back to that earlier question that you had raised about what are the options between Israel and Palestine. If we go back in history, it is important to remember that, just as we are remembering the remembrance today, in history, the two-state solution was actually accepted by the Israelis. It was the Palestinians who had initially rejected that idea. And then it was only after the Arab proposal came about that that became a much more common thing. But by that time, the Israeli position had changed. There is no option but to go for a two-state solution, because what happened at the end of the Second World War, when the state of Israel was created, was something in which you do need this understanding. And I think that is why on occasion, again and again, we, as the rest of the world have talked of the two-state solution. But the contours, the definition and the elements of that two-state solution is something that must be decided through diplomatic, peaceful consultations between the two parties, which is Israel and Palestine. And it is not necessary that Israel needs to adopt war as a way to resolve this problem, because it will not. It is not necessary that the Palestinians need to take refuge in the Hamas and its ways. There is another way that the bulk of the Palestinians subscribe to, but it's only through those processes. And that's why Prime Minister said yesterday that we need to look ahead and we need to have the sense of humanity, because without that, you will only diminish yourself, in which you will be in this quest for power, but you will not have a solution.
General Katoch, I mean, apart from, of course, the two-state solution and the Israel-Palestine issue, there is the concern that Israel has with Iran. And that also, I mean, has led to war in the recent past. And the clouds of war continue. So in what way, do these, the Prime Minister's visit comes at a time like this, and he's sending out messages which are peaceful. How would you contextualize it?
It's very surprising that Israel and Iran, prior to the, when the Ayatollah took over Iran, they had extended relations. It was only later, once the Ayatollah Khomeini came in and took over Iran, that was the time when the rupture started, because that time the Iranian leadership said that they will obliterate Israel from the face of the earth. Now, once one country starts saying that we want to obliterate the other country, then that leads to friction.
Right. We are also showing visuals of Prime Minister signing the visitor's book, and now currently meeting, of course, with the President of Israel, Isaac Herzog. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So, if something like this happens, like I had one of the meetings with one of the former Israeli ambassadors, and he made it very clear. He said, if it talks like a duck and walks like a duck, we will think it is a duck. Basically, what he was trying to say is, if every time they threaten to obliterate us, we have to take that threat seriously. That is why the present problem is not so much of missiles, it is of nuclear weapons. Why Israel is concerned about Iran having a nuclear weapon is the possibility of it being used against Israel. And Israel is a small country. One nuclear weapon will annihilate it. So they cannot afford that. They cannot afford to take that risk. So they will always be on a militaristic path as far as Iran is concerned on the issue of nuclear weapons. And I think if that issue is taken out, I think both Iran and Israel can be friends again, as they were earlier. In a sense, they are natural allies and partners. They have been there before. Okay. And if the mutual trust can be built once again, I see no reason why there should be hostility between the two.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, could you provide us with context, to the visuals that we are seeing? Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting the President of Israel, Isaac Herzog, before he, has the official the delegation level talks and the signing of agreements. Of course, the President of Israel is a largely symbolic office, but give us the importance of this moment.
Prime Minister's meeting across a cross-section of people. Some of it is protocols, some of it is reaching out to the various shades of thought that exist in Israel. And like, it was mentioned earlier, as in India, which is a democracy, and Israel is also a democracy, there are these various shades of thought. So the meeting with the president is a ceremonial and protocol, but at the same time, it kind of represents this totality of the idea of what Israel stands for. You noticed and you'd mentioned about how at the Knesset, the differences that are internal came out during Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments. But when it comes to the presentation by a foreign dignitary and a brother and friend and a partner like India, they all came back because then there is unanimity. Prime Minister also met with different intellectuals, with the business community, technology leaders. So Prime Minister is reaching out to Israel because it is a very complex situation today. We know that just on the eve of Prime Minister's visit, there were strikes and protests in Tel Aviv, which were political in nature against the government that's in place at this point of time. One of the older allies of the government was leading the protest. So it's important for us to engage with all groups because our deepest friendship is with Israel and the people of Israel. And of course, we work with the leaders of Israel as well. But that is something that should never be undermined.
General Katoch, how does Israel view India's role in shaping the future of West Asia and seeking stability and prosperity for all the nations there?
I think Israel has got great faith that India can be a very major player in bringing peace to the region. And this is primarily because while we had excellent relations with Israel for the past many decades, over the last, I will say 10 to 15 years, we have built up a special relationship with the Arab world as well. And I think that's a very important thing. We didn't have that good a relationship with the Arab world earlier, which we have now. So because we have good relations with all the actors in West Asia, when you talk of Iran, Saudi Arabia, or you talk of Israel, or you talk of the Gulf countries, we are in a position actually based on the trust factor, the trust factor which India brings to that table.
Right.
To be a very major player in any rapprochement which takes place there.
The two leaders have also planted trees, and these visuals are coming in from Prime Minister's visit and meeting with the President of Israel, Isaac Herzog. This meeting has taken place a short while earlier. We continue to remain with these visuals. The planting of trees as well. I mean, after all, Israel was a desert, and we looked at, how drip irrigation has transformed the place. Ambassador Bhattacharya, agriculture is also a significant component of our cooperation. To what extent, is not only planting a tree symbolizes various other things, but in terms of, the productivity of the soil, what does it symbolize?
So I think the first thing is that this is a mark of respect for Mother Earth and the wealth that she gives all of us, which we should cherish and nurture. And when we plant the tree, we actually help the ecology of our planet Earth. And we look at it in the concept of Mother Earth. And I think a lot of these tree planting sessions that we've had in different parts of the world, often led by Prime Minister himself, have had this particular focus in mind, apart from the ceremonial one of planting a tree, sharing a tree from India sometimes. So that is the symbolic part of it. But I think you're right. There is actually a deeper connect through the very strong agricultural connect we have. India and Israel have worked together in the establishment of centers of excellence, where we look at high-yielding varieties, we look at specific processes which we, through which we develop those. The drip irrigation system, which incidentally has a very strong India connect, because one of the principal innovators of drip technology in Israel is a person of Indian origin, and he collaborates with Israeli and American industry very actively. And then, of course, to look at watershed management, because it is really what we need is an integrated approach towards Mother Earth. And we have watershed management programs with Israel, which are currently operating in central India as well as parts of western India. And these are interesting because what we have in these is the blend of Indian traditional practices and knowledge for watershed management with the Israeli technologies that they have developed. And they've changed vast tracts of desert into arable land, lush fields which yield fruits and so on. So we are now combining these two together, where the best knowledge output of both sides is coming together. And agriculture is one of those areas where this is happening.
General Katoch, would you want to comment on this aspect of tree plantation and its symbol?
No, I personally feel that tree plantation is a very sacred part of any visit. It is deeply symbolic. Ultimately, when I'm looking into the future, presently, I think the biggest danger which we are facing is in the environment. The degradation which has taken place all across in many parts of the world, especially in India, when we look at our mountains, when we see the way the glaciers are, the speed at which the glaciers are melting. I think these are very, very dangerous signs. And one of the ways to prevent it is really tree plantation. Of course, we've got to rejuvenate our forests and our mountains, get back the green cover again. This is symbolic, yes, but I think the symbolism is very important, and hopefully over the years, we will be able to get our environment in better shape than what it is today.
If you look at, the big picture, Ambassador Bhattacharya, Israel is pivoting towards Asia, and India also acts as a bridge in a sense between the East and the West. So to what extent, is this visit contributing to both of those goals?
This visit has, to my mind, two specific objectives, one which will be stated much more openly, and one which is something that still requires discussion. The open part is this beautiful part of our bilateral relations, and I think this is something that is going from strength to strength, expanding into new areas, becoming more future-oriented, involving more and more people, engaging the youth, and that is, I think, something that we have no difficulty with, and we are very, very close partners. The other part is, how do we bring about this new realignment in global structures, where geopolitics is in flux, and the flux is not just in West Asia and its politics and security, but it is there in so many other parts of the world as well, where we need these consultations so that leaders are exchanging their views, and so that we can come towards a better understanding of what is the shape of the future going to be. What is the role for emerging powers? Prime Minister Netanyahu talked of India yesterday as a global power. And in some ways, he's not incorrect, because India will be a global power. And therefore, these things have to be factored in. We see that Israel has been kind of not particularly happy with the developments of the Chinese reaction to many of the recent things in the region, and therefore it reaches out to countries like India, Korea, Japan, in the Asian continent. We also see other realignments that are happening. Is there a possibility of the revival of the Abraham Accord? Because that was one in which the Arab world bought on to the idea of a future in which Israel be a partner. And so these are the adjustments that are taking place. And I dare say that Prime Minister has already had consultations, discussions with Prime Minister Netanyahu last evening when they had their private dinner. And I'm sure this will be touched upon in the discussions to come about as well.
General Katoch, we can see that there is a great personal rapport between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu. How does this influence the trajectory of the relationship? Because, I mean, even when Prime Minister went in 2017, Netanyahu was the Prime Minister then, and we saw, the relationship certainly getting the leaders leading the relationship in a sense.
I think it's very important when the leaders have a rapport with each other. It makes the functioning of the lower administration far simpler. That element of trust again comes in. But let us also remember, it is actually national interests which will dictate the relationship between two countries. So those interests first have to converge. And if we have those convergence of interests, then a rapport at the leadership level really strengthens that relationship. It gives it a power which it wouldn't have otherwise had. So I think, merely having a leader-to-leader relationship without a strategic convergence, that doesn't work. But having a strategic convergence and then having a leadership, a rapprochement, both the leaders thinking alike and getting along well with each other, then that strategic convergence, I think it gets a boost. And that is a very important aspect. This is what we are seeing now in the relationship between India and Israel.
And not only with Israel, Ambassador Bhattacharya, but with other countries as well. How important is it for, the leader, the principal, to take forward the relationship, in a sense, with a vision and direction?
You said it right. It's really a question of vision, because in most cases, unless the relationship is one which is based entirely on animosity and competition, most relationships are a mix of cooperation, competition, and there could even be conflict. So how you manage these three C's of cooperation, competition and conflict is something that leaders can play a very determining role in. And the kind of emphasis that you provide, the kind of levers that you use, and how do you leverage so that you build a relationship that is based on mutual respect, on sovereignty, and at the end of the day, make sure that the people of your country benefit from that particular process in terms of their empowerment and realization of aspirations. And I think what we have seen in recent times in many of our partnerships is that this has always been at the core of the way we've developed our relationships, and particularly so in the case of our strategic partners.
So we are viewing that, the relationship's trajectory is certainly moving forward in terms of, in 2017, it became a strategic partnership, and now perhaps a special strategic partnership. And obviously the areas of convergence are increasing. But Israel, of course, as was mentioned yesterday, is, even though we have, old civilizations and everything, is a very small country compared to the gigantic size of India. In this context, what are the dynamics at play here?
No, Israel may be a small country when you're looking at it physically or in terms of population. That's true. But you see, when we talk of skills, I think they bring great skills to the table, whether it is technology or any other thing, and they are world leaders. So I won't look at them as small in the technology field at all. They are giants in technology. They are competing with the best. They are competing even with the United States in certain aspects. But at the same time, India has also got certain advantages in technology which we can share with the Israelis. So ultimately, when I am looking at the India-Israel relationship, it is not going to be that Israel is giving us technology and we are taking it. I think it is much more than that. India is in a position to assist them in certain technological fields, especially in space, in missiles, etc. I think both of us can share technologies. So we are in a very, I would say we are in a very sweet spot as far as Israel is concerned. They are small in terms of size, we are big in terms of size, but I think we are equally matched as far as technological capability is concerned, as far as our interests are concerned, and that I think is a very important aspect of the relationship.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, in the 30+ years of the relationship between India and Israel, to what extent has the relationship grown in terms of let's say, content and substance, and in what ways have positions, geopolitical positions, remained the same?
We actually had a relationship with Israel even before we established diplomatic partnership. The diplomatic relations were established only in the 90s, but even before that, there were many areas in which we collaborated on both sides, and we had consultations. But this has certainly picked up momentum. I often think that when we look at two systems, and they're all sovereign entities in that particular sense, when we look at two systems, there are certain complementary factors and there could be certain competing factors. With the two partners, being India and Israel, you find very little in terms of competition, but more and more of the collaborative aspects that come out of this relationship. The knowledge area is one in which India is a thought leader. India is a technology powerhouse. But Israel has niche areas of technology that it has developed to global standards. And therefore, that provides that substance where the huge education and institutional base of India can complement the Israeli niche areas of technology advancement. In terms of the kind of aspirations, we are very alike. So I think if we look at it over the last 30-odd years, I would say it's followed a trajectory that has had very few bumps. But what we need to inject into it is that it becomes immune, because the only thing that has affected it is not the relation between the two of us, but the relation that each of us may have with the rest of the world or the region around us. And therefore, we need to work together to make that less of a factor. Because, for instance, why has IMEC not progressed in the manner that we hope? And part of the reason is the instability in the region. So are there ways in which we can bring stability to the region? And that, I think, is the next hurdle to cross.
General Katoch, so how do we move forward in terms of, let's see, when we've been constantly looking at the events that have been taking place, and we see that now the real important aspect is of the bilateral engagement in terms of, the delegation level talks. What are your expectations? I mean, something different that is likely to come out from the past?
No, I don't think there'll be something dramatically different from the past. We have a strong relationship, and that is going to be maintained. In today's world, simply maintaining a strong relationship, I think, is a very important step. So that is going to be maintained. And in certain fields, in defense technology, I think there will be certain convergences which may not come out in the public domain, but which will be there, as a form of understanding, and that will be mutually beneficial, in my view, to both the countries.
On that note, I'd like to thank our guests, Major General Dhruv Katoch, Director of the India Foundation, and Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya. Thank you very much, former Secretary of Ministry of External Affairs, for putting this visit into context. Of course, we continue to give you news and updates that are coming in from Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. We'll get those inputs from our correspondent Shubhendu as and when he gives them to us. Right now, the Prime Minister will be meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. They will be having one-on-one as well as delegation-level talks, and then the signing of agreements, and then the Prime Minister will conclude his visit. Thank you very much for watching For the Moment. Namaskar.